Welcome back to another episode with Mitch, presented by Notorious Pulls Radio. And for this week's episode, we're going to talk about one of the biggest UFC pay-per-views to kick off the summer, and that's UFC 290, Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodríguez. And before we get into it, if you are new to our show, please leave a like, follow, and subscribe on all social media platforms, and let's get into it. UFC 290 is going to be on July 8th. It's taking place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. And we have the champion, the reigning, defending Alexander Volkanovski going against the interim featherweight champion, Yair Rodríguez. You obviously know that Alexander Volkanovski is undefeated in the UFC in the featherweight division, of course. He has defended his belt numerous times and has absolutely obliterated his division. Obviously, his last fight was a loss. He fought against the lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev, and they went all 5 rounds. He obviously fell short to a decision, but it was still an outstanding performance. Obviously, other notable wins by Volkanovski. He obviously beat Max Holloway 3 times, had an insane battle with Brian Ortega, the Korean Zombie, and the other killers in the division. His opponent, Yair Pantera Rodríguez, 16-3, is finally getting his crack at the UFC featherweight title. He's coming off a beautiful performance against Josh Emmett, which he won via triangle choke. He also beat Brian Ortega and has faced some of the best competition in the featherweight division. He already has had 12 fights in his UFC career and 19 fights total, but 12 of them were in the promotion. So he is a big-time veteran when it comes to entering the octagon. He represents the country of Mexico, and he is one of the sharpest strikers in the division. I love the leg kicks that he's able to throw, and I love how he's so creative when he gets in a tough situation. He always somehow pulls out an ace when it matters most for a big win. He pulled out already numerous times, obviously in his last one against Josh Emmett, and obviously one of his most famous fights, one of which against the Korean Zombie with that vicious elbow in the last round knockout. How do I see this fight going? I see it simply. It makes most sense for this story to be a win for Alexander Volkanovski. He's going to come in and he's going to have his way with Yair, because Volkanovski went 5 rounds with Makhachev. He is undoubtedly the greatest featherweight in history currently. He has just nonstop proven himself in the division and is an absolute driving force when it comes to on and off the field. Obviously, he was the Ultimate Fighter coach when he fought Brian Ortega. Obviously, his team won undefeated featherweight and is the only guy to even show some sort of weakness out of Islam Makhachev. All those accolades alone shows me that Volkanovski is the clear favorite within these two, and he should be the one to continue his winning streak. This fight hopefully leads to Volkanovski winning. The UFC will set up a Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria defeats Max Holloway, and then Topuria versus Makhachev for featherweight gold. Do it in Australia, do it in Spain, wherever it happens. It's going to be a magical showcase matchup. So I'm excited for these two to fight. Obviously, our co-main event, this is a double header, and that is Brandon Moreno versus Alexander Pantoja. Obviously, Moreno, our current champion, record 21-6, already has 15 fights with the UFC, and is one of the only fighters to fight Deigeson Figueiredo in 4 matchups. They did not just have they had not a trilogy, they had a quadrilogy, which is a very rare thing in combat sports. Obviously, Moreno came out on top. Figueiredo is moving to the bantamweight division. Obviously, Moreno can make weight at 125 and wants to continue his reign with his title. His opponent is the number 2 ranked flyweight, and Pantoja actually beat Moreno in the past. So this is right now the best way to settle the score. Moreno's the current champion who lost to Pantoja, and Moreno has everything to prove to show that the fight that they had years ago will not be the same fight that they will have Saturday night. Pantoja, of course, is on a 3-fight win streak, coming off great wins over Alex Perez, Brandon Royval, and Manel Kape. This is not going to be an easy fight, but the way I see it is I'm a huge Moreno fan. I love the boxing that he's been putting forward. I love his ground game. I think he's becoming a much more complete fighter as the years are going on, and I just love the story behind him. So for that reason, I'm going to stick with our current champion Moreno to continue his UFC stardom and his championship reign. The next fight that I'm going to introduce, which is absolutely insane, which can easily be a main event on its own, and that is Robert Whittaker, aka Bobby Knuckles, the Reaper. And he's going in one of the biggest shit talkers in the UFC, and that's number 5th ranked middleweight, Dricus du Plessis. I mean, this guy got some balls. Nonetheless, he's on a 5-fight win streak in the middleweight division. Picked up some nice big wins against guys like Derek Brunson, Darren Till, Brad Tavares, Trevin Giles. Obviously, he has a great record of 19-2. He's a huge middleweight. He's a big finisher. But do I think he's ready to face guys like Israel Adesanya? That's hard to tell. And I know the best thing for the UFC would be is for du Plessis to beat Whittaker and then give him the title shot against Adesanya, and it'll be Battle of Africa. It'll be South Africa versus Nigeria. And maybe the UFC will actually bring the event to Africa, which would be obviously huge for the fans and for the countries that it will take place in. The way I see this, Bobby Knuckles is a savage. Obviously, he's a former middleweight champion. His record and resume is absolutely top-notch. He has fought every single person in the middleweight division twice or at least once. Obviously, he had a great win over Marvin Vettori. He lost to Adesanya 2 times, picked up great wins over Kevin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier. Obviously, he fought Yoel Romero. Anyone who even fights Yoel Romero have to be a sick savage, because that guy is still fighting at 46, which is absolutely insane. And du Plessis, I don't feel like he's had that elite level in the UFC yet. So he hasn't got a little taste of what it is to fight guys in the top 5 of his division. And by the UFC matchmaking him with Robert Whittaker, I think that's an absolute amazing thing for the fans. And to have this not even as the co-main event or the main event, but to have this as the 3rd event in the main, this is an absolute gift from the UFC matchmakers, and I'm super excited. I'm going to be rocking with Bobby Knuckles. I do believe he's going to shut the mouth off Dricus that night, and I'm looking forward to when that cage closes for the both of them. If you want to support us, some of the best way to show us love is to get our merchandise at notoriouspulls.com. Remember, if it ain't notorious, I don't want it. This is your host, Mitch. We'll see you soon, and enjoy this Fight Night UFC pay-per-view.